good tone today, doesn't it?
Yeah. The drum is different every day, just like we are.
That's right.
Do you think the drum is like our alter ego, Carter?
Well, it changes tone depending on the humidity in the air. But it's different every day, like you say.
And just like we are different every day. Hey, we're the ZLORD podcast. I forgot to identify ourselves for anybody new. And that's Carter on the drum. And this is teZa.
It's like that. It's like I asked my dad once. I said, well, what do you think about, he told me, I said, what do you think about this situation? He said, well, I think, and he said, well, this is my opinion on it. And then he paused and he says, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, on Tuesday,
Right.
Thursdays, and Saturdays, I usually have a different thought about it.
Yeah, and this morning I was so happy to see our paper. We get the Wall Street Journal. And there was a panda bear, an adorable panda bear on the cover, instead of war, famine, drought, earthquake. It was such a relief to see an adorable little animal. I think they do that purposely every now and then, just to make it so that people don't lose their minds, because if we get too much of bad news, we get the impression that there's nothing but bad news happening in the world. But there's plenty of good news, and there's plenty of beautiful, adorable panda bears if we choose to look at them and find them. And of course, the newspaper don't sell so many newspapers when it's just panda bears. Wars sell more newspapers, right?
If it bleeds, it leads.
Oh my God, yes. So we have a topic, as we always do, and today we're going to discuss, where's the drum roll? What do we do about life's disappointments?
Yes.
So you go first, Carter.
It's a big question.
I'm
it's
usually
a very
always going
interesting
first.
question because it comes up quite a bit because we do get disappointed. Like I had a huge disappointment the other day on something that was important, something that's going on in our neighborhood where we were
Fighting City Hall.
Yeah, and they voted against not only me, but 75% of the people that live in this neighborhood. They voted to help us with something that we don't want help with.
Yeah.
And there's not much we could do about it. We're kind of studying whether or not we can attack them legally, but it doesn't look very promising, and you never can win much fighting City Hall. So we're just going to have to be disappointed in this thing that is going to affect us negatively for the rest of our lives, really. So it was a huge disappointment. And so the question is, what do you do with a disappointment like that? I mean, how do you deal with it without letting it just consume you and turn you into a negative, angry person?
Yes, that's very important to not let it eat our lunch. Because life is filled with disappointments. And that's just the way we have to learn to live, the balance of joys and sorrows.
A lot of things are happening like that.
The balance of our emotions, the balance of our physical, the balance of our mental state, the balance of our spiritual state. So that was a big disappointment in terms of a community being involved. And
so how do you come to grips with it is the question and still have a blissfully joyful, happy life
so what are you
in the midst
doing?
of this
Because
reality?
I just also want to make a note for those who are listening that Carter was not just an observer of this controversy. He was very involved with trying to do the right thing and to do research and to contact professional people who can help. I mean, you put a lot of time and energy, and we went around and walked our neighborhood and got petitions and really got to understand the pulse of people's sentiment about this.
We got a better understanding of it than the politicians that are voting on it did by just putting in some elbow grease.
And so how are you dealing with the disappointment you yourself personally, because you had a lot more invested in it than me, for instance. I mean, I can shrug my shoulders and say, well, that's politics. That's what I do, because I don't believe in politics. But you have a lot more invested. So what are you doing about your disappointments in this situation?
Well, I think that I think that there has to be there's a few things, but one of them is that I have to have an acceptance of it. I have to accept it, and even though I don't like it, and I'm still kind of fighting against it, and I don't have to like it, but I do have to look at the bigger picture of life, and that this little conflict that's here is one part of the universe, and that God and the universe and the cosmos continues, and the waves are still coming in from the oceans, and the world is big, and the stars are in the sky, and there's a lot of great, wonderful things that are larger than this little conflict, and I don't want to let my personal issues and problems overwhelm me to the point where it destroys the joy of life, and that usually takes a little time, and then if I can attune myself to the higher things, to the divine, and just ask for the divine to come in and bless this situation, and then it's on me to not let it permeate my life, and I'm working on that.
So, are you assessing also about how much more to be involved in it?
Yeah, I am, and we're still working on some things that we may be able to put into play to get them either to slow down or maybe even to still stop it. There's still a few things, but it doesn't look very promising, and the people that we're working with in our neighborhood don't seem to grasp that it has to be presented in a simple, easy way so that everybody can understand it, because it is complicated. There's a lot of issues.
So it's not just your own personal goal. You're dealing with like a committee that's not really a committee, because it's from what I understand, there's not really much organization to.
Well, we're all just regular people. Nobody, none of us understand it very well, so it's complicated. And the people that are in the government situation, they say stuff that isn't true, and we catch them saying something that isn't true, but they're really not legally bound. They can say it's not true and say they're going to do something and don't do it, and there's no way to say, oh, you did this, we can prove that you did this, and they just say, well, they don't care. And there's no way to stop them legally by suing them for lying, for instance. It's not. It won't hold up. So we just have to eat that part of it. But another thing about disappointment is, disappointment oftentimes I've noticed comes when we have expectations, when we go into something having expectations. Like, for instance, in a simple example would be, I go down to play tennis to have fun. And 2 hours later, I come back and I'm in a grumpy mood. And you say, well, I thought you went to have fun. And I said, yeah, well, I did. Well, she said, didn't you have any fun? I said, yeah, well, yeah. She said, you lost, didn't you? I said, well, yeah, I did lose.
I can always tell when you lose. She
said, well, you allowed the fact that you had the expectation. I said, well, we should have kicked their ass, and we're better than them. And she said, well, you had the expectation that you were going to win, and when you didn't win, it colored your entire experience and took all the fun out of it. Well, it didn't take all the fun, but it took some of the fun. And she's right. And she's right, because I went down there with an expectation of the result, which didn't happen, and it colored my entire mood. And I've learned from that.
But that's a tricky thing in sports.
It's interesting.
When you're in sports and you're an athlete, and you go into a game, whether it's football or baseball or golf, not with the expectation, but with the purpose of being the winner. Yeah. I mean, there's an underlying theme of the reason people play sports to the level you do, not just amateur, not just out there on a Sunday with your buddies. I mean, you were a professional, and it's hard. Whereas for me, I've never been a professional sports person or some kind of a challenged person, and being an artist and a yogi especially, which is training myself to not be competitive. I mean, since I first was introduced to the world of mind, body, spirit, relationship to life, which is yoga. When you are a yogi, that's the way you approach life. I have trained myself to get away from competition. So it's tricky for you. And you have to be on guard. You have to be on guard that you don't have expectations.
Yeah, yes. And it's interesting
You have to have
because in
awareness of it.
sports in particular is a good example of this, because whoever won and lost is really, at the end of the day, the lowest level. Because the sports thing, the reason that everybody plays sports and watches sports is to get on the instant, on the now, on the moment. And you learned it yourself. You used to talk about it because your first husband was a really great basketball player.
Husband.
Your second husband.
You forget about
Well,
it.
the first husband, you just married the guy so he could get into the country.
He was an
so that wasn't
Israeli.
really-
I just married him.
That wasn't really your
No,
first-
that was
your
a marriage of,
were
just
just-
friendship.
I actually was at that wedding,
What?
at your first wedding.
No.
I was there, and you were
Wait a
there.
minute. This is a digression from the subject.
But I was there, and I met that guy, Lon. I remember when that happened way back in the.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Anyway.
Let me just say something before we go much further. We're getting really off on tangent. I'm sitting here being tickled about the conversation because a lot of people thinking about disappointments who might be listening to this are thinking about the upcoming political, challenge, the duel. And there's going to be a lot of people who are disappointed. Those who put their stake in the politics has to save us. The politics has to lead us the right way. And I've always been very adamant that politics does not serve that purpose in life, that it's our consciousness, the level of our awareness that is going to be the champion of the day. And so weaving that into talking about sports rather than digressing into, teZa's many marriages.
Whoever wins the political is going to have a big effect on, because whoever wins is going to bring their policies, and it's going to affect us, just like the economic situation.
For a limited amount of time.
For 4 years.
So that's a limited amount of time, and yes, it's not for all eternity.
So that's a different thing than whether the Chiefs win the Super Bowl or not. So
yeah, but it's a bigger picture of blowing up about the way people have expectations. They think that politics are going to save the day. They think if their team in sports win, they're going to be really happy for all that year. You know what I mean? It's just a bigger microcosm of the same thing when you have expectations. And so, you haven't asked me about my perspective about
I didn't get
disappointment.
through saying what I was saying.
Oh,
You
okay.
interrupted me.
You finish it up then.
And so,
Because I have something I really want to talk about.
So what I was saying was that the highest level of sport is to enjoy the instant and to enjoy the dance, and whoever wins or loses doesn't really matter in sports, because it's about the instantaneous stopping of time and the getting on the now. And even if you're just watching and not playing, you're still on that instant, and all your cares and things have gone away, so that you can enjoy that moment. And so for me to go and impose upon that if I don't win this point, it's no fun, that's a mistake. That's like a low level of experiencing the thing and putting on the past or the future onto something that is really just a now event. So the beauty of sports is the ultimate level of it, the highest point of it, is it doesn't make any difference who wins or loses. I never care most of the time. I don't have a favorite. I just like to watch a great game.
Right.
Now, sport, the political thing is different, but the disappointment issue is the same. Let's say that your candidate loses, and you can either say, "Oh, I'm leaving the country," which everybody says but never does, and my life is ruined. But the truth of the matter is, it's just another day. It's just another turn in the twists of fate.
The screw.
And you can
the turn of the
continue.
screw.
And you can continue to be who you are, and you continue to work for the things that you believe in whatever situation evolves, and you don't have to be disappointed. We have one friend who actually died, even though her candidate won. She was so upset and so she died right when the election was going on, and her son went in there and said, Mom, he won. And she went out. Even though her candidate won, she died anyway because she was just so upset about it.
She was so involved in the drama. And the back
and
and
I know
forth
her
and the
well,
counting of the ballots.
It's perfect that she would die behind that because she was always so
She
wrapped
died of a
up
heart attack, right?
in politics and wasting her time being mad her whole life about it. But okay, so that's it. So what's your thinking?
It's also
about
like people can die of a heartbreak. You know, people think that that's just from Victorian novels where, she died of a heartbreak. But people actually do have
their own heartbreak.
Heart attacks and keel over when something shocking happens because they are not prepared for life being a disappointment.
Yeah, and you can't. It's your own damn fault if you die from a heartbreak.
Oh, right. It's your own damn fault.
Yeah, because you're going to overcome all of that. That's life.
Okay.
You know. So what do you think about disappointment,
Well,
TeZa?
thank you for asking, Carter. You're getting better about this repartee. So I've been thinking about not so much disappointments. You're the one who used that word. I've been thinking about the word perseverance because my life is about not focusing on the disappointments, but to focus on perseverance. And, of course, one must determine what it is that's so important and that is worthy of dealing with the disappointments that come along with everything, that when the disappointments outweigh the whatever they call successes or joys or marks of approval, whatever you say is the opposite of a disappointment, that I can say, not just persons in general, that I am going to continue with what it is that I have set as an important contribution in my life to being a human. So I'm talking about my work as an author, as an artist, as a creative, spirit activist, putting things out into the public domain, the public consciousness of keeping positive no matter what. And perseverance is something that I cling to because I'm the type of person earlier in my life, I got very frustrated when my efforts were not rewarded or noticed or popular.
A lot of disappointments.
Yes, I've had a lot of disappointments.
So
and a lot
did you do a lot of the poor me thing?
I don't know. I think I just ran away. No, I didn't do the poor me thing so much. I did a lot of running away with my consciousness, with my awareness. I would just dismiss, like for instance, I'll be real specific, like making something really beautiful because I'm a creative person. I would make something really beautiful and really put a lot of energy and effort into making it and creating it. You know, we're talking about a lot of time, not just a few hours, but weeks or months, putting it together, having a final product, and then not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to get it to the world, not knowing where is the outlet that I can present it, like, a debutante. Here she is in her beautiful ball gown. And so many of these projects just went into a drawer, a shelf. I'm thinking in particular of my first book, We Are One. I had created that 15 years before I finally published it because I just didn't have the courage to get it out. I didn't have the courage to make a statement. For whatever reason, I understand now, I needed to resolve some things in my own consciousness, my own emotional life, before I had the courage to be so public about my thinking, about my efforts, my art. And so that's just one example about how I get to that place where I've really put a lot of effort into something and then I just don't have the courage to go that one step further and find the way to make it public. So
but I think you've overcome that, and through perseverance,
yes.
Through perseverance, you turn that around, and now when something like that happens, you just buckle down and persevere, and just like you've just gotten out your fifth book is right now. You just published it, not only that first in the eye, but the other four, and you've got you've got it out just in the last couple of weeks.
But yet I'm facing my own personal disappointment that it was not, talked about more, that it was not picked up by the New York Times Book Review, those stupid little ego things that one can chastise oneself for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a creative artist.
Well, you wanna
I
be-
didn't win the Oscar, with my YouTube video last week. So
No, but one of the funny parts of that was that you did get on the bestseller list in some venue had you as the best-selling. So you took
of
it
new releases in metaphysical fiction.
Yeah, and in the excitement of it, you said, "Oh, isn't this great?" And you took a picture and put it
screenshot.
on the Facebook, and they
They
blocked your
banned
account.
me. I got banned. I got thrown into Facebook jail
You got
for being over
all your
enthusiastic.
people in your Facebook.
They said it was a copyright infringement, and I
God.
know it was
I
like
couldn't believe
it was
it.
like
I said,
what
"Oh,
next,
Jesus."
And then I had to jump through all sorts of hoops and blow all sorts of whistles to get out of Facebook jail, and I'm still 1 foot in it. They sent me an email yesterday and said I have been hacked again. So
Really?
yeah.
Oh, my
I didn't even
God.
get to tell you because we had some guests. But anyway, there's disappointments all over. Like making a souffle. How many people who've tried to cook a souffle and it's a flop? Learning how to make something is usually there's going to be some disappointment in your first effort. The first time I tried to make what's that stuff that everybody drinks? I always want to call it kimchi, but kombucha. The first time I made my kombucha, it was so alcoholic. I felt drunk the first sip, so I was disappointed, and I said, okay, I'm not going to spend the effort. I'm not going to persevere with that because there's so many other things that I'm so good at. I make great kimchi. I make great soufflés. I make great this. I make great that. So sometimes we have to, that expression, we have to pick our battles, what we're going to persevere with. Like right now, I bet you're thinking, do I want to persevere with the trail issue? Because that's what it's called, the trail, which is an asphalt 8-foot wide road. It's not a trail that goes right smack dab through the middle of our beautiful wild greenway here where we live. And it's going to ruin trees.
unbelievable.
It's going to ruin marshes.
Mind-boggling.
It's going to ruin the environment for all the little bunnies.
One of the most beautiful places on the east coast of Florida.
It's really an environmental
It's like
cause.
It's like a jewel. We got like a jewel, and they're gonna, in the interest of progress, they're gonna destroy it.
They think they're doing us a favor
Jesus.
because some
Anyway.
people complain that their feet get wet walking on the road.
Anyway,
So
whatever.
you have to weigh for yourself. I've already weighed that I can't get involved with that right now because it's just too much for me.
Well, I think we have to persevere to do everything in our power to stop, and then if that's the way of the world, then it's on me to not wallow in the disappointment and anger of it, and just see the bigger picture and see that the sun is still up there and the world is still going on, and all the things that are happening, and we just do what we can do, and have to. It's an exercise in acceptance and not letting the disappointment of it take over and overwhelm. That's another. Disappointment is another aspect of selfishness and self-involvement, because if I was to allow myself to become overwhelmed with anger over this, that's wallowing in my own selfish stuff and my ego.
Your ego.
And instead of thinking about how to go down there and be of service to somebody else in some other way and get out of my own selfish stuff and not let that cloud my thinking.
But everybody,
almost everything boils down to that.
Everybody has
the
free will.
Selfish part of life.
We talk about free will a lot in our discussions, and every single one of us has a different temperament. We have a different body temperature. We have different kind of like breathing rhythms and different kind of teeth, and we also have different things that we use our free will power over. And somebody might really decide that they're going to persevere with being a political animal. Another person would say, oh, I'm going to persevere with being a physical animal and really get my body in shape. Or another person will say the spiritual. They're going to learn how to meditate. And another person will say, oh, I'm going to persevere with all three of these and keep them in balance. And then another person will say, to heck with it all. Just pass the beer and give me a cigarette, right? We all operate from different levels of using our free will. And it all boils down to being aware of what is important to us individually.
Yeah. And being aware of the big, disappointment's a funny thing because it happens a lot, and it's self-involvement, and we're all called upon to look at the bigger. I think looking at the bigger picture, that's looking at something that's bigger than that,
Yeah.
and recognize, because the universe is so huge, there's so much, and we get involved. I get involved in my little microcosm of what's going on. It all becomes so important, and really, at the end of the day, it's not important. It's just one little thing.
Like next week is the total solar eclipse that everybody's been looking forward to, and it's amazing how many people are invested in chasing it, to being in a place where they can see it, having parties and, honoring it and postponing trips so that or making trips or, centering their activities around. And I've known people who've been planning this for, months.
Talk about disappointment. I'll tell you what the ultimate
If it's going to be a cloudy day.
It's a cloudy.
Oh my God.
That's exactly what happened. That happened to me once on an eclipse. A freaking cloud came over.
Or the Kentucky Derby, where the guy comes into the room at the very minute the Kentucky Derby's on, some old guy, and stands right in front of the TV and get out of the way, and he can't get out of the way, and by the time he's out of the way,
he was too infirm to move. He walked in.
The
right
Kentucky Derby was
as
over.
They said go, and he stepped in front of the TV in his walker. And everybody was yelling at him to get. The more they yelled, the more confused he got. Took him 2.5 till they came around the last corner home stretch. They didn't get him away from the TV until the home stretch. God, that was mind-boggling.
And
everybody was drunk.
Something like
drinking Mint Julep.
Kentucky Derby happens in 3 minutes or something like that. And so the eclipse, hey, I wish all of you who are spending your efforts to see the eclipse, I hope there's not going to be a cloud cover.
Me too.
And I hope you have a wonderful time. But
it'll be wonderful no matter what.
The microcosm that Carter just talked about can be as magnificent as an eclipse. The inner experience can be as still and as sweet and as savory and as sublime as ecstasy can be, right?
Yeah, and if the cloud comes, then isn't it wonderful that the Lord is testing your resolve to not be disappointed in it? And God, there's so many aspects of our frame of mind, and there's so many different ways of looking at things that and it all boils down to a choice, how we choose to accept things and see things. We had a friend who was just here, and he's just such a positive guy and looking at things in such a positive way, and he just will find, he just find the silver lining in anything, and it's infectious, and it's a wonderful way to be, and you just look for the. So for me to look for the good in everything, and it's okay to be disappointed because it's a natural aspect of things, but I don't think it's not okay to let it overwhelm me. It's not okay for me to let disappointment overwhelm me. I need to I can recognize it, but not succumb to it.
Instead of succumbing to disappointment and being depressed, there's also a reason that we have disappointment, which could sometimes be our motivating force to do something better, to do something new, to do something in a different way. And I'm thinking in particular about Neil. We were just talking about husband number 2 for me. He was a basketball player. He's no longer on the planet. And he told me that he was told, hey, just get off the court. You're a lousy player. This was like in junior high when he was... It
happened to Michael Jordan, too. Same thing.
Yeah, it happens a lot to athletes. Who become superior.
Great.
And Neil Walk, who went to play for the Phoenix Suns and New York Knicks, he was so determined. by being told you're a disappointment, get off the court, you can't even play at all. And he said, I'm going to show this guy, not with anger or revenge, but just he was motivated. He got motivated by the disappointment. So there is a positive spin on everything.
Sure.
Even a negative emotion like being disappointed, it can sometimes motivate us if we're really aware that it can be used in a positive way and not let it turn into that angry spite, where you want to get back at somebody.
Yeah, and how his name came up originally in this beginning of this conversation was that he used to teZa told me that he would say that he was just interested in the dance.
Yeah, the dance.
And he understood that. And a lot of professionals, the highest level of athletics is to just enjoy the dance of it all. And
Yes.
and the higher the level of play and performance is, the more advanced the dance is. And you can really see, like in professional football these days, the dance that's going on out there is mind-boggling. And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day who won or who lost. Most of the time when I'm watching a football game, if it goes to overtime, I just turn it off. Because if it gets to overtime and it's still even, then it doesn't matter. It's a moot point of who's going to win, because anybody can win when it's like that. But the thing is, I'm usually spent by then because it's been 3 hours of intense the dance, and that's a fulfilling, wonderful thing to watch.
So I'd just like to bring in another aspect of this dance. In my current book, which is just out now, called The Bridge Tender, which I encourage all of you to check out on Amazon, I talk about the dance of the universe, the dance of consciousness, the dance of good and evil, the dance of what's right or wrong, and the dance of obstruction and destruction and creation and positive things, and the dance of the opposites. There's this dance that could be just the breath of the universe, the breath that we have within us as humans. We have the dance within us. It's acknowledging all the different aspects of our being and keep them in balance. That's the dance.
Yeah, it's a dance. It's a dance, and it's really a dance if we can see it. Because a lot of times the dance is going on right in front of us, and we don't even realize it's a dance. We don't see it as a dance.
Like, give us an example.
We'll impose our opinion on things, and then it'll be like a win or a loss, or this happened
and
or
it's
good,
just a
and
dance.
And really, what it is it's a dance.
So what you're saying is no judgment, just to observe, to witness.
Even if you see
the
people,
dance,
something
witness.
going on in a conversation between some people, you can see that as a dance where they're back and forth and back and forth. And
I was doing that a lot with our company. I was observing the dance.
Yeah, and he said something interesting. He said W.H. Auden had one of his famous quotes was "Dance while you can," and this guy was talking about to make sure that that he wants to make sure that he dances as long as he can, and he doesn't get relegated to sitting down and being grumpy and not dancing with the joy of life. He's a Zumba guy. He's the only guy in the Zumba class.
That's great.
So he was doing some Zumba here. God, it was hilarious watching
I think
him.
you should get into Zumba,
He doesn't
Carter.
have any inhibitions. It's a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to see somebody with no inhibitions. It's
You should
beautiful.
get into Zumba, Carter. It's fun.
Dance while you can.
So
That's a
maybe
good thing.
right after
That's
you
a
have
good
your
thought.
knee replacement, which is coming up, right after you heal from that, we can both get into Zumba.
And that's been a dance. The dance of the pain that's in my knee has been a dance back and forth, and me playing on this thing right to the bitter end, because I'm going to go out and play on it today again, and it hurts,
goodness.
but it's
And that's a dance that
It's a
incorporates
dance of my body,
dancing with pain,
Yeah.
because you know you're going to be in pain, but you say I can handle it without drugs, because you can't do the drug things anymore, because you went to the very bitter end with that, and you were told you can't do anymore. With Celebrex we're talking about.
Yeah.
And, the dance. Yes, we can dance with pain. We can dance with disappointment. We can dance with negative because we know that positive is on the other side of our twirl as we swirl in this dance.
There you go.
It's great. Oh, well, this has
Okay.
been fun, Carter. And we send lots of love to each and every one of you. And there's Carter with the rhythm of life. Om Namah Shivaya.
Listen to that.